Thank you for being here. My name is Ayla Nova, and it is an honor to share the practice of Yoga Nidra with you. And I wanted to also invite you to explore into other practices that can complement Yoga Nidra. This is why I've called in an expert, Matthew Cooke, who is the founder of B3, Body Based Breakthrough. This is a trauma-informed somatic practice that he has taught over to 100 plus coaches. He's got over 15 years of experience working with executives in companies like Apple, SpaceX, Pixar, Disney, and the list continues to go on. I encourage you to listen all the way through so that you yourself can experience with myself the B3 method that Matthew Cooke has offered to all of us through this session. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy this episode. Matthew, thank you for being here.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to chat all things somatics and connection with self and with others. Yeah. It's like the greatest joy on the planet to talk about this stuff.
Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. Somatics can be considered a bit of a broad word. So, how can
Yes.
we dive into what it looks like, what it sounds like for you?
It's such a good question. So somatics comes from the Greek somatikos, meaning like the living aware the living aware bodily person. And and it's funny, even just in that, like I am just getting over a cold, which is fun to just be present to for myself. And it's like, oh, I get to be in awareness of that even. And that all of I think that's my probably my favorite thing actually about somatics is that it's all about presence, awareness, acceptance, and inspired action that like comes from the body. That's how I would think about somatics. Yeah.
Mm.
High level. Anyways, there's so much we can get into. I guess the one other thing maybe that I would say is that in talk therapy, there's an emphasis on a top down approach, which is the mind is going to inform the body. And like I'm going to set goals and I'm going to be analytical about it. And there's so much value in that. And then the somatic way of approaching therapy or coaching is to let the body inform the mind, and that we're really letting the body take it. And so, in fact, the way it works is that 80% of communication between the body and the brain is from body to brain, and only 20% of communication is from the brain to the body, which is really wild. So we actually say there's a stat that's our nervous system receives 12 million stimuli per second, which is wild. Like our nervous system, our body is like taking in the temperature in the air, what's going on in my organs, how I feel safe or not safe with this person that I'm with. Like there's so much information that it's taking in. And of those 12 million stimuli, our conscious mind only can process about 50 to 60 bits of information. 12
Wow.
million, 50 to 60. It's wild. Yeah.
It truly is. And it is so true. The I've been in talk therapy and it worked for me at some point, and then I realized I was just in this repetitive cycle of telling the same story over again, and I was stuck in that. Well, we know about being stuck. It's not really true, but you get caught up in this cycle of constantly going through that same narrative over and over again. With somatics and also with yoga nidra, I
Mhm.
think there's so many parallels, which I even want to explore more into that with you,
Mhm.
which is that it is a bottom up approach. First, getting into the body, getting into
Mhm.
the body before you jump into the rocket ship.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's wild. I mean, not to get all super sciencey right away, but one of my like deepest passions is the science of the nervous system and neuroscience and with polyvagal theory and all these things. What's fascinating is that like our brain is built on a foundation of what's called implicit memory, which is body memory or like procedural memory, where it's like our muscles hold a memory from before we ever learned how to speak. we'd say pre-verbal. And then there's this really cool thing that happens around 2, 3 years old, and as we continue to grow up, is that we start to like bring on vocabulary and we start to understand, oh, part of being a human is that I'm going to be speaking language. And so then we build this secondary way of being in the world, which is communicating through words. And that's a very left brain process. But the body speaks this very native language to us that like before we're even born, it's like fully formed in many ways and is right brain to right brain communication. So
Mm.
I don't know why I threw that in, but I guess just to say that like to me, that's the most foundational way that I can communicate with you
Yeah, I love
and
the
with
way that you
myself.
put that. When I first was introduced to your work, I was actually in a virtual community, and I've always been interested in somatics. I've put on workshops with somatic facilitators, and so I've always had an interest in it, and I can see these parallels, right, with Yoga Nidra. But what really caught me was that most of the practitioners that I've worked with have never brought in the element of the koshas. And when I watched your video, I saw you draw it out on a map and you talked about the koshas. And I was like, whoa, this is the first time that this has been delivered to me in this way for me to digest it. And I was really excited to reach out to you and to learn more about what you're offering. So tell me how a little bit about how the koshas are brought into your practice or how you share that with your community.
Totally. Well, if you're ready for it, I'll try to not make this like a 45-minute soapbox here. Well, the koshas are so powerful. So we look at it's in yoga, and obviously your community probably knows this, but we have these sheaths of our being, or these layers, or yeah, layers of our being, and starting out with what's called Annamaya kosha, the body, which is like this the most gross physical, superficial layer of our being. And then we go into pranamaya kosha, which is the breath and really the life force energy that we're taking in, um, yeah, through all of our sensory organs and all the things. And then we go into manomaya, which is the mind. And then we go into Vijnanamaya kosha, which is like body wisdom in a way. It's like a deep, deep wisdom. And then we have Anandamaya kosha, which is bliss. My background, and I can probably like go way deeper, but just having done over 1,000 hours of yoga teaching certifications, that has really informed the way that I work with my people. And so when I was coming up with this process maybe 15 years ago, I really wanted to touch on all of the layers of our being, so that when someone comes out of a body-based breakthrough session, or B3 is what we call it, that they have a sense of feeling like their whole being got like a shower, like that they like got to like feel so
Hmm.
like clean and so washed on every level, because I don't know that all practices do that. And I think that that's lovely. I mean, I think we have different practices for different things, but for me, this was like, how do I have the most efficient and effective and simple, quite frankly, process and system to every morning for like 15 minutes that I can feel fully cleaned from the inside out. Yeah, that's like the shortest way I could probably articulate that. Yeah.
Oh, and for me, I'm like, oh yeah, go 45 minutes on that one. I mean, I spend my life sharing that work, and so
Mm.
it's awesome to hear it from your perspective as well. And wow, 1,000 hours of teacher trainings. That's incredible. I I love also that it just creates such a tangible, like when you can see it on a map, like way to look at what elements we're going through. And,
Yes.
I know we talked about not getting too sciencey here, but I loved learning about how in the limbic brain, this is where we're becoming aware of our senses. And then these senses are sending a response signal to our nervous system. And then from the nervous system, that's where we create our reaction and then sending out these signals to the body. And that creates these imprints. And when you think about the koshas, there's like this wave maybe of that experience that goes through it. And that's where the somatics comes in, where it gets a little bit trapped in the body or it gets trapped in Anandamaya kosha where you might not be a cognitive, like you can't necessarily know that it's there, but you can feel that it's there. And then that goes and bleeds into or, follows into all of these other layers. And that's why I believe like your work with somatics and also yoga nidra is such a beautiful way to approach it from the inside out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I like that's so well articulated. Yeah, I mean that's how I think even when I was younger, I was like, how do we approach this where we can like help support somebody from the inside out and from the outside in and sort of like come at
Mm.
it from two different angles so that we can like really work through the body and bring it back into a yeah, for those who are just listening, like I'm making a bunch of hand gestures, but into like this, like a really seamlessly flowing, natural, yeah, element to working with the body. Yeah, yeah, and so that's really, I think, what gets me so excited. Yeah, so in a body-based breakthrough session, the way that we're working is we do want to engage the mind, we do want to engage the body, but we also do engage the breath. And I know that in Yoga Nidra too, there's also a subtle element of the breath as well, because and that was what was articulated to me at a really, when I first started teaching yoga, even was that that is actually the intermediary between the body and the mind is
Hmm.
the breath,
Yeah, it's
is
the
pranamaya.
bridge.
So yeah, so for me, it's like we can't do this body work without doing breath. And that's why I think like breath work is actually such a big thing right now culturally. You know,
Mm.
the big breath work. And there's different styles, you know. So in terms of the koshas, like I think that there are ways of doing it with like cathartic release and like these big monstrous things. And I'm going to say something kind of controversial, but I wonder if you would align with it or not. Is that, you know, I think that that stuff can be wonderful. But as I've done a lot of my study in somatic experiencing, it's a 3-year training program for those who aren't familiar, where you walk out a trauma therapist, is there is yeah, there's something really profound about being able to do these big cathartic things, and it feels really good in the moment. But then what it's doing is it's actually training my nervous system to get really good at building capacity or being able to hold large amounts of energy through what we might call the stress response. So through like intensity, I can hold so much because, oh, I did this really big thing. But personally, like that's what I grew up with, you know, and a lot of us grow up in intensity. And so I'd actually rather retrain my nervous system towards what we'd call the pleasure response, meaning to say, like, I can hold, because our nervous systems are amoral, like they're not like holding good or bad. It's literally just like how much like electrical impulse can the nervous system hold. And so when we talk about capacity of what I can like handle in a moment and still be in presence, it doesn't matter if it's pleasant or uncomfortable. And so it's just like, what do I want to train my nervous system for to like build capacity? So in body-based breakthrough and in a lot of my experience of yoga nidra is it's building actually through what's pleasant, like through what's like,
Mm.
oh, wow, that feels so good. And so it's interesting because I think we live in such a culture, at least here in the United States where I live, it's just such a big culture of like pushing and grinding and going harder and faster and stronger. And where there is validity in that, there is like moments and times and spaces that of course I need to do that. But I don't want to train my nervous system that it's like that's how we operate. Like I don't want that to be the
Mm.
modus operandi. Like I want it to be like, man, can I really take in that beautiful sunset and like have that just like ripple through me and be like, wow, that's like actually wild. Or like this cup of tea that I'm drinking that I can just be like, wow, that's actually incredible. And that I can take in with a level of sensitivity, um, the profundity of that. And that can actually build my capacity to experience life and to be in presence with life. Yeah. So that I think that's my biggest take on like at least like the breath work thing to get really controversial. But so when I'm focusing on the breath and when we do that in body-based breakthrough, it's all about like pleasant breaths or what we might call like cooling breaths,
Mm.
rather than heating breaths. So
I love that.
controversial moment of the day.
Well, I
Yeah,
feel like it may be controversial, but it would be amazing if maybe near the end we can share practice where we can experience something like that.
totally, totally.
And then I can get a chance to understand what you're sharing, and also everyone else can get an opportunity to experience it as
Yes.
well.
Yes. Well,
And
can I just say quick with that too, like, because I
yeah.
get excited about this stuff, is like part of it is it's for me, it's less about like I'm gonna be an optimized human and be a robot and Elon Musk, Tesla, stuff. It's like instead it's like, what's the felt experience when I'm done with something?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when I'm done with Yoga Nidra, I feel incredible. Like I just feel really good. And
Mm.
so like my system wants more and more of that. And so I'm always considering, yeah, how do I want to feel? And ideally, I'm imprinting my system and sort of saturating in more and more of what I want to be experiencing more of. Does that
Mm.
make any sense? I don't know. Like
It
it's like
makes
we
so
haven't.
much sense. It makes so much sense. And
Yeah.
actually, as you're sharing it, I'm like feeling it. I'm my body's like, "Oh yeah. Remember when you used to push yourself to the absolute limit and and what that would do to you and
Mhm.
then you had to take rest?" It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm going to take rest now because I want to nourish my body." It was like, if I don't take rest, I will literally the off button is going to go
Yeah.
off on its own, you know?
Mhm.
So I know in a period of my life it was like that. It was just being productive, always on the go, trying to get everything done. And for me, it was realizing, and what the beauty of Yoga Nidra is too, is that, and also somatics too, when you start to create a relationship with your body and your
Oh,
mind, then
yeah.
you can actually begin to use those self-awareness practices for that softening, for that gentleness.
Yes.
And, I've been to those somatic ones where it's like, ha, and like it's
Oh,
really,
yeah.
really intense and it's fun, right? But I
Yeah.
almost feel like I get a little bit of a hangover from it. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay,
Yes.
now I have to deal with like my body of exerting all of that. So I'm really
100%.
excited to learn about what you're sharing, because what I think I'm understanding is that your approach with it, with the element of yoga and the somatic experiencing that you've learned and dived into. Who's that with again? Peter Levine?
Peter Levine, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Peter Levine. He's kind
Um,
of like the grandfather, like OG of all the somatics world. Yeah. Yeah, he started
oh,
doing this stuff in like the late 50s or early 60s, which is like wild, yeah. In terms of formulating like a system around it. So, yeah.
one of the offerings that he gave that I integrated into the Yoga Nidra program I share is the VU breath.
Yes, the Voo. I use Voo all the
Yeah.
time. It's so
Yeah.
good.
For me, it was like, not just tapping into the body and also working with like the vagus
Hmm. The vagus nerve,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, the vagus nerve, allowing that vibration of sound, because with yoga nidra, you're going into this internal practice. You're being in stillness. And so complementing it before or after with that somatic VU breath, I felt like it brought like a tangible, felt experience of the vibration before going in, but also as you come out. They just complement each other so well.
That's such a good articulation. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's like Ayla, like I want organic maturity. I don't want forced maturity.
Mm. Tell me more
You know,
about that.
you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
I feel like with like the cathartic release stuff, it's awesome because it's like, it's like we take like these heroic doses of psilocybin and ayahuasca and all these things. And again, it's like, but to me, it's like it's perpetuating this cycle of like forced maturity. It's like, well, I'm gonna go really hard in my life and I'm gonna like break down all the doors and I'm gonna like make $1 million overnight and all of these things. And those are lovely. And this is what leads to burnout because it's what one of my teachers says, we have an addiction to intensity.
Mm.
We have an addiction to intensity. And so it's like then we find self-development, we find medicines, quote air quotes medicines, and they very much so are medicine for a lot of people. But then we like apply that same level of consciousness to the spiritual work and we overdose it and we go really intense. And that's where we get these cathartic releases. And again, yeah, like I don't know that there's anything wrong with it. It's like I think it's just like what do I want to train my system for? So I guess I don't want to like totally like badmouth it. I think it's just like what I'm choosing in my life and people that come into my work are kind of like also done with the burnout thing. And they're
Mm.
just like, I've been there, I've done that, and I just like, I'd like to try something else. And Albert Einstein
Yeah.
even said, you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that it was created.
Ooh, I like
You need to be in
that.
a different state of consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what body-based breakthrough is in so many ways. And actually, Yoga Nidra does the same thing. Like it takes us into these really beautiful, like alpha and theta brain waves. Like it literally, from a science perspective, it takes us from beta, like these really high frequency, like super high buzzing brain waves, into a much lower state of consciousness in terms of brainwave state. And then new possibilities are there, new possibilities are
Mm.
there. And like
Yeah.
that is where I get stoked. I'm like, yeah, what are the new possibilities? Because I've done everything in the beta brainwave thing and I can try all that all day. But that's when I end up hitting my head against the wall trying to figure the thing out, and it just doesn't always work. And sometimes it does work, and that's lovely. But for me, it was actually on long walks and on the yoga mat was when I found that I got my best ideas. And so that's actually like how we did it. That's how it started. What, 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago was I started to find that this is when I was getting my best ideas. And I remember there were teachers that were like, let your thoughts pass like clouds. And I remember thinking like, well, that's crap because like these ideas are gold and I don't want to lose these ideas. Like this is my best thinking right now.
This is my best work.
It's my best work. So I actually started, and I obviously do both. I do some where I do the practice of like letting the thoughts
Yeah.
pass. But part of what body-based breakthrough for me is has been so impactful in my life and in the over 100 practitioners we've certified and all of the people that we've worked with over the years is that um, it allows us to capture those thoughts onto paper, to externalize our thoughts on paper, as David Allen says, and to have mind like water. He's sort of referencing
Mm.
Bruce Lee,
Bruce
but
Lee, yeah.
yeah. But David Allen talked about that a lot. Is like as you in his getting things done method is like as you put things on paper, then like I don't have to hold on to them. Like it doesn't
Oh.
have to take up mental real estate. So then like I can just like actually let that thing move on. And then the beauty is that like then it like starts to go more like back into the back, I guess you could jokingly say like the back of the brain, and it's like more of an unconscious just sort of floating around, and I don't have to like mentally hold on to it tightly. So it actually kind of loosens the experience. I don't know if any of this is making any sense.
Oh, it's making
Are
so
you
much
tracking?
sense. I feel like
Uh,
I'm listening to you and I've just got these fireworks going off in
yeah,
my head. I'm like, this is
yes.
gold.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that for me is where the real magic happens. And what Deb Dana talks about is she says this thing. She's one of like the polyvagal theory pioneers alongside Stephen Porges, and she talks about restorying, this idea that as my state changes, my story changes.
So
Which like that
true.
could be a whole nother podcast in and of itself,
Oh,
but essentially is like as my body changes, like as I soften my state, or as I get my state pumped up, it does change how I think. Like you think about when you are with a partner or a best friend and you get into a big fight, like it's just like you're a horrible person and I can't believe it that, and it's like, and our thinking gets so extreme, and in fact it gets very black and white. But then
mm,
when we are able to then walk away from that conflict and separate rooms, maybe I go for a walk, she goes and does something else, then we come back together. There's a softening in our thinking, and there's more nuance and there's more color and there's more possibility there. And so that's what body-based breakthrough does, and what somatics does is it offers more color in our experience of life.
oh, I like that. More color.
Yeah.
Technicolor body breakthrough.
Yes, totally. Technicolor body-based breakthroughs, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
If those of you are listening, you could see that he also has this Technicolor beautiful picture in the background. So I'm like hearing you and visualizing it in real time. I love that. And it's so fascinating. I was talking about Vijnanamaya Kosha in the program that I share, the Peace and Rest, just last night. And this is one of those elements in the koshas, the inner wisdom of the body. And that's why I feel like the fireworks are going off inside of me, because what I shared was that when we go through Vijnanamaya kosha, it's allowing us to have that, now that we've gone through Anamaya, connected with the body, we've bridged it with our breath, experienced our beliefs, our emotions, located them. And then we go into Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is like this parallel to the dream state, where all of a sudden these different neurons start firing on both sides of the brain, not just one.
Yes.
And then you start building up these connections. And so ever since I had this like felt experience of that in the teachings of it, I started realizing, oh my goodness, this is just like, you're sharing what you share through the lens of your experience. I share what I share through the lens of my experience. And now I'm picking up these books. Like you look at David R. Hawkins, The Levels of Consciousness, and
Mhm.
then you see the inner work, the yogi, I think they're called the Yogi Couple, and they've created the inner work book,
Mm.
which is like
Mhm.
looking at these themes of consciousness as well. And I'm realizing
Mhm.
all this work that we're all doing to embody our experience rather than try to, dissociate from it. It's all leading to this direction. And this is that inner wisdom within us, technicolored body breakthrough that's happening.
Yeah,
And it's so
100%.
cool.
Yeah. Well, even just to go a layer deeper of like how I look at Vijnana Kosha, the body wisdom, and this very much so comes from Peter Levine. In his work, he talks about it as SciBAM. It's an acronym. In body-based breakthrough, we refer to it as a somatic signature.
Mm.
So as Ayla has a very unique somatic signature, as I have a very well, I just say you have a very unique signature. I have a very unique signature. Anytime that I pose a question to my body, what's the next step in my career? How do I get back on track with my health goals? How do I repair with my partner? Whatever the question may be. And that's what we articulate inside of our journal for body-based breakthrough. But whatever that question is, there's a very unique body signature that I have when I ask that question. And there's a very unique signature that your body has when you ask that question, meaning that um, inside of somatic practice, again, from leaning very heavily into Peter Levine's work, we say that there's an image. Like every time I think about what's the next step in my career, there's some image that sort of like unlocks there for me. Maybe it's a memory or a picture, or like I can see like a sunset or something. Everyone has a very unique image that comes to them. That's the first piece. There's thoughts. No, we're all really good at thoughts. So like I don't need to spend much time on that, but we all have thoughts that are unique to us. But then there's also, which that probably is more in the mind, that's more monomaya. But then there's sensation. Like there's a very unique sensation. So as I think about what's next in my career, actually I'll just do that for a second. Yeah, there's like a buzzing and like a brightness in my chest and it's very light and buoyant. Uh, and my shoulders feel like really strong. There's like a tightening in my shoulders, but it feels like very pleasant. So, anyways, and I could probably keep going on because I love sensation. So I could hang out there all day, but that's part of body wisdom. And then you have emotion, which we all know what emotion is. Like there's some but many of us are not quite aware of some of these channels. And that's what sort of, and we talk about them as like channels of experience. So as I think about what's next in my career, there might be an emotion of joy. There might be an emotion of sadness. There might be disgust, happy, sad, whatever. Like there's a full range of possibility there. And then the last one, the one that a lot of us don't actually always realize, is that there's an impulse. There's like a behavioral, like physical, primal impulse that is there, that is active inside of me anytime I think about that thing. And so that's what we talk about as a unique somatic signature that I have as I call upon that body wisdom, as I write down what we call in body-based breakthrough a headline, my question, whatever it is that I want to pose to my body, almost like I'm going on a date with my body or I'm like interviewing my body.
Yeah.
That's how we kind of jokingly talk about it with body-based breakthrough is like, yeah, there's a very unique signature that my body has. And so when we are in a body-based breakthrough session, what we are doing is we're moving and we're breathing, but we're asking the body, like, as I think about that headline, what images come up? And like really giving, this is what I get so geeky about Ayla, is like really giving that time and space to
Yeah.
like unfold. Because the thing is, for many of us, we may have not been taught that. We grew up in a household where, like, oh, so I'll just say for me, thought was really heavily taught to me, and I guess image probably. But like sensation and emotion, like that's just like that became a very atrophied muscle in terms of my body wisdom for many, many years. And then the cool part is I worked on it. And now it's just like you'd work a muscle in the gym, it totally comes back and you have availability of it. And so that's what I think is like what I want to like make a call out to people is that these are very real, there's very real information that your body has to share with you all of the time. Like it is always speaking to you. And the question is, are you listening? Are you listening? And so again, it's some of us have real strengths in this, and then some of us just it's just that it's not even a weakness. It's just that it hasn't been built up. It hasn't been utilized. And what I love is in yoga nidra, like there is so much space to open up to
Mm,
that awareness.
yeah.
So
Well, I see such a beautiful compatibility between these two practices in the sense that they
mhm.
are sharing the same essence through a different lens. And, I always am also sharing with people, you can lie down, lay it to rest, but you also need to get it out, get it out of your body. So, this mention of like creating a headline, asking yourself the question, receiving the information, but then not just like sitting with it, allowing it to like flow through you in whatever way that looks like, whether that's like art or writing or, speaking up and sharing whatever that truth is or
Mhm.
experience. And, you know, we've got to, think about yin yang energy, right?
Yes,
I'm getting excited talking to you, Matthew, because I'm thinking like, what a beautiful compliment. Because I myself agree in that this, intensity of, doing something really intense and then doing something like yoga nidra right afterwards. I would rather, just gently bring myself through an experience rather than having to
Mhm.
go to that spike. Because, like yourself,
Yes.
you know, I grew up in a pretty rambunctious household, I was on a farm with lots of animals and brothers.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
it's just like very curious and fun, but it also was chaotic. And
Yeah.
so doing these practices now, I realized, I was doing spin classes, going on this intense bike ride every day and raw, like loud music. And like, don't get me wrong, I loved it. But I
Super
recently,
fun. Yeah.
it's so fun. But I recently had to take a back seat because I was thinking,
Yeah.
if you continue to run from the bear, then you're
Yeah.
always gonna feel like you need to shut it down, like you have to calm it down. So just bring this element of relaxation in and there's seasons for everything, right? You can take a season,
100%.
right?
Thanks for naming that because I think you're right. I think in different seasons people need different things.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, in our youth, I mean, I don't know as much about China like traditional Chinese medicine, but I hear this a lot is like this idea of like in our youth, like yeah, like you're meant to be like building and using like lots and lots of energy. But as we get older, hopefully the idea is that we're gaining more and more wisdom and experience, and
Yeah.
then we do it smarter, not harder kind of thing. But I love the way you just said that though, Ayla, because like I think about this a lot is building in consistency over intensity.
Mm.
Consistency over intensity is like
Yeah.
I'm in the marathon of life. I'm not trying to be in a sprint. And I think that a lot of us are like sprinting, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
but how long can you actually sprint? Like, if you really like, if I just set you down on a like a long track, like how long could you actually sprint for? Maybe you could legitimately sprint for 2 laps. I don't know, but like, could you sprint for 50 laps, 60, 80, 90 laps? I don't know. Could you do that?
Oh
I
man.
couldn't.
The word sprinting automatically sends a signal to my nervous system.
You're like, "Ooh." Yeah, totally, totally. So yeah, I think that's it. It's like I want to do consistency over intensity, like you're saying, instead of the spikes. Because I think some people are like, well, but it's not realistic. Like, how am I supposed to be calm all the time? It's like, well, not you don't have to be calm all the time. You don't have to be like
No.
regulated all the time. But to know that like if I'm more consistently than not, um, moving at at like just a consistent pace instead of these like high highs and low lows. Um, yeah, like I'm not going to crash,
Yeah, yeah.
which is just exciting, you know? The guy I talk about is like the roller coaster of transformation. Like I'd much rather get off that roller coaster and, I don't know, be on like maybe like a chill bike ride, Not like a high
Yeah.
intensity bike ride, just like a chill one,
Oh.
like along the beach or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know the feeling. I remember hiking mountains and just being like, wow, the treachery to get to the top. I'm just like so exhausted. And then more recently, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna hang out at the strong, sturdy base and enjoy the flowers and the butterfly,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
take a little bit of a step by step rather than like I've got to put a flag on the top of this thing.
Like,
Uh, but I would love to, maybe now would be a good time for us to explore some of what you're sharing, what you're talking about.
totally.
I'm like, now I feel like my body's like, yes, craving this experience.
Totally. Yeah, let me do it. This is fun. Yeah, what I'd love to do is give us an experience of Somatic Signature. I think that'd be
Yeah.
really fun. So, one of the things we'll talk about is like just letting your eyes just take a walk about your room. So if you're watching on a screen, just taking a few moments just to allow the eyes to walk, and even just like maybe softening my vision so I can take in a little bit more of the room. Just kind of checking it out, noticing are there any plants or paintings, or maybe there's a tree outside that's just like kind of pleasant to look at. What this does is this tells my brain, like, number one, like it gives us a sense of self in space. I am here in this place at this time. So I'm existing in space right here, right now. And then secondarily, as you're looking about your space and finding things that just look kind of like nice to look at, like it's kind of cool to hang out with this lime green plant that I have in my space. It's kind of nice. That I'm also recognizing that there aren't any immediate threats in my environment. Hopefully, right? Hopefully there aren't any immediate threats in my environment. So it actually allows my biology to go like, okay, cool. Like it's actually maybe a
Hmm.
little okay to go inside. So then you can start to bring your attention awareness like back in front here, like back to yourself. And if you want, you can either close down your eyes if you feel comfortable or safe, or even just to like draw your vision maybe 2 feet down in front of you, just a gentle, soft gaze. And then feel your feet on the floor. And just notice that actual sensation of like, oh yeah, okay, that's what my feet feel like on the floor. And then feel your seat in your seat. So we're starting to kind of work the periphery of the body. So we did the full environment around me. Now we're kind of coming in a little bit. And then if it feels safe, just to kind of like check out your breath. Just notice with your eyes closed or your eyes soft, what's going on with my breath right now? Does it feel like it's deep and low in my belly? Or does it feel like it's high up in my chest, towards my clavicles or like my collarbones? You wouldn't have to even change anything. You're just kind of checking it out. It's like I'm just kind of tracking it. I'm just sort of watching it. I don't know about you, but I notice as I start to track it, my breath just actually kind of naturally expands a little bit. And so then we'll do a cool exercise for somatic signature. So I want you to think about your favorite person in the world, your absolute favorite person. And if people are scary, that seems kind of silly to some of us, but some people that's true. Maybe there's a pet, or maybe there's a tree, or maybe there's, yeah, something in your world that you feel really connected to. And as you think about that, what's the immediate thought that comes to mind? Still with your eyes closed, what images surface when you think about this person, this animal, this piece of nature? Is there a memory? And then notice any physical impulses. Like, do you feel an urge to smile or to like reach out or to perhaps embrace this person or this animal, this piece of earth? And pay really close attention to the sensations in your body. Like, is there warmth in my chest or a tingling sensation in my belly? Maybe my hands feel really warm. Emotional lives. As I think about this person, this animal, this earth, what emotions are there? Happy, love, comfort, and see if you can really take that in. Like even just like 2% more, like just a drop or a full more. Really letting that imprint. Oh, after going through the images, the like sort of impulse or behaviors, the sensations, the emotions, has your initial thought about your favorite person changed or deepened in any way? Like there's more information available to me. There's more data, more wisdom. And if you have a journal around you, I invite you to just to take a few moments to just sort of jot down, note your observations. Like, what did you find out? What did you notice? And I'd say, like, let's come back out the same way that we went in, which is to slowly, as you feel comfortable, kind of feel your feet on the floor, feel your seat in your seat, and maybe just start to peek open the windows to your eyes. And then just take a look around your environment again. Just let your eyes take a walk. Just kind of notice what you notice now. And then as you're looking around, you might notice that things look a little different. For some of my clients, they'll will walk into session and they'll just look outside and they'll go like, "That's a cruddy day outside. Like it's just so bad. It's not a good, it's a bad day outside." And I'll talk to them 45 minutes later after we've done a session. Nothing will have changed outside. And they look outside and they're like, "Wow, it's just like it's just a bright, beautiful day outside." It's really sweet. So this, oh, just one quick piece here is that one of my teachers calls it outsight, which is to say that whatever I see on the outside is just a reflection of what's going on the inside. In
Mm,
some schools of thought, they might call that projection, but I think that projection can also have like a bad connotation to it. But
mm,
sometimes it's a really beautiful connotation. It's like, oh, if the outside like looks really, and even right now, like I'm looking outside and there's like this really beautiful like glimmer on the trees, like on the leaves, and my heart feels really like big and bright and full, like as I look at that. And so like that just tells me like, yeah, there's really beautiful, like I'm experiencing those glimmers and stuff on the inside. Like those
mm.
little like the sun dancing on the leaves. Like
Yeah.
that's what's happening inside of me, as I'm experiencing on the outside, you
I
know?
love that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
so
outside.
interesting. I also had a contrast of experience inside and outside. I was thinking of my grandmother. She's not with us, but she's come to me in a dream recently, and so she just automatically I was like, "Oh, I love her so much."
Yeah.
And I had this memory of her eating ice cream with me with the orange sweater on. And so the color that came up for me was orange. All I could see was orange everywhere. And so then when I open up my eyes, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of yellow in here. Such a
Oh, it's
funny,
so
like,
funny.
it was like, wow, it's yellow in here, not orange. Like, it's such a funny
Uh-huh.
experience
Oh,
that contrasted
yeah.
just to share my own. But
Yeah, yeah.
oh, I
Yeah,
love
anything else
that.
that you, yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, what else did you notice?
I noticed
Or even what are
that
you
like
noticing right now? Yeah.
yeah, I noticed that as we do it, there is becomes this surrendering. And the way that you cued something was really beautiful. There was almost like no placement on the breath, and then it was just a noticing of it. And sometimes we can get caught up in that. And you're like, oh, okay, watch my breathing, and then you want to change your breath automatically. But this just takes you out of it. And it was just really nice to go through that acknowledgement of the breath and not have to, change it in any way, just be with it. And so that automatically brings one sheath, one layer down, and I could just feel my body automatically start to settle into the experience and really loved that. Yeah. So automatically, yeah, going into that excitement to experience this, and then that experience like alchemizing into just sort of a really lovely header of I'm going to hang out with my grandma in stillness for a moment, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask, like, did you notice, was there like an impulse that you felt towards her, or like, or was there like a pushing away or a bringing towards, or did you feel, yeah, anything you noticed? And you don't have to also, obviously, if you don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable.
Well, I think initially I was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to, I was like, I should probably think of someone who is presently here. And then the cognitive mind was like, but no one's actually presently here except for you and Matthew. So like you can think about anybody you want right
Yeah,
now.
anyone.
Uh, so then I let that in, and then I loved that you offered the options of like other elements to bring into like what it is that you love. Because I mean, I'm not trying to like break down what you shared, but for me, the
Go for it. Yeah.
reception, the way that I received it was like, it's funny, we have this narrative that plays out in our head. Am I doing this right? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And when you can allow yourself to just get into the body, get into the breath and listen, that's when you can allow the felt experience to shine through, where
Yeah.
I'm like, now I'm in this beautiful orange bulb with the energy of the
Yeah.
essence of my grandma, and I'm thinking about ice cream, so it's like,
Yeah.
who's not smiling when you're
Yeah.
thinking about ice cream? Uh,
Totally.
unless you're lactose intolerant, then maybe you're not smiling, but
Totally.
uh,
Oh, what a sweet memory of the grandma. I really love
yeah.
that. And I think what's really special to, yeah, so I'm just like, cool, more orange in Ayla's life. Or
Yeah, I
like
need to bring some
just
more
like a
orange
touch
in.
of orange. Yeah.
Yeah, this
That's
is
really
the
sweet.
yellow room.
The yellow room,
The
yeah.
gold room.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it makes me think like that might be an inspired action that you may. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to give it to you, but obviously it's like that's usually one of the questions that we'll then ask. And we don't do it necessarily with favorite people normally. It's just like a fun little taster for us to experience. But typically we do walk away from every session with like, what's the inspired action?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I feel
Yeah.
like the inner wisdom that shines through for myself is kind of like that playfulness, she has this essence of
Yeah.
playfulness. So the orange to me is like representing in this moment kind of like that sacral chakra energy, like being in
Yes.
flow, creation, bringing that to light too. And also the theme of what we've been chatting about, Vijnanamaya Kosha, how that
Mhm.
inner wisdom starts to shine through. And
Beautiful.
I also mentioned this is these associations of like, okay, so orange to me represents this.
Yes.
So I love what you're sharing. I want to learn more about it. So how can everybody else listening learn more about body-based breakthrough and what you are sharing with the world. Because this is in the short period that we've been talking and going through this experience, like I'm just so curious and excited about learning more.
Well, a couple ways. Yeah, Instagram. We're on Instagram at Body Based Breakthrough. We also obviously have a website called bodybasedbreakthrough.com. But you can also find we have on the School platform, which I know you and I have talked a little bit about. And for those of you who don't know, School is a newer platform. It's lovely. And we have something called the Somatic Coaching Community, and that's totally free. And that's a really easy way, excuse me, to start to check out what we're doing. And you can actually do body-based breakthrough sessions with us for free. So that's a really cool way. But for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting to do a somatic coaching certification, we have a 3-month certification that we train somatic coaches. So you would be a body-based breakthrough or B3 certified somatic coach. Super happy to chat about that as well for anyone who's interested. We have our next one. This is going to kind of date this podcast, I guess, but January 13th, 2025. But then obviously we run them 3 times a year as well. Yeah, it's super fun. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, I guess the only other thing is, and this is a little bit newer, so this is like hot off the press. We're
Ooh,
gonna start. Actually, Ayla, you have been incredibly inspiring to this. We're gonna start
oh,
doing more stuff on YouTube. So starting to
cool.
bring more of this kind of goodness to YouTube because I think you have done a beautiful job paving the way for just giving of service, just really sharing your gifts. So that's kind of our next
That's
foray,
next
starting to play
leaf
on YouTube a
turning.
little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That's so amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
it's been such a beautiful space to share all of this work. And yeah, I'm in your school community and the somatic coaching. Great space. Also did a meditation there as well, which I absolutely loved. So for all of those of you who are listening or watching, please, I'll leave all of this information in the description, in the show notes, so that you can get in contact with Matthew, his beautiful work with the B3 body-based breakthrough. And I'm just really so honored to have you on the show today and to be able to share your work. I would love to have you on again because I feel like we just
Let's
brushed
do
the
it.
surface.
Yeah, this
So
was just the tiniest bit. It's so good. Yeah,
yeah, so we'll
I
have
would
to
love that,
explore
Ayla.
that as well. So I'm really looking forward to how all of you have experienced this today and wherever you may be, whether it's on Spotify or if it's on YouTube, please leave in the comments or below what came up for you in the session that we did today. Maybe how allow the comment section to be that free flow where you share what you experienced through this practice that we did today with Matthew. And was there anything that you wanted to share before we sign off with everyone? Maybe something that if somebody was getting into somatics and they were just first entering into that realm, we got a little touch point of it today. What would you have said to yourself before getting into the somatic work to like enhance your experience?
Yeah, that's such a great. Okay, you totally got me. That's so good, Ayla. It's like when we grow up with our best friend who lives right next door. And unfortunately, one of their parents gets a job in another country and they move away to this foreign country with their parents. And we call that friend every day. And we're super excited to hear about them in their other country and they're learning all these new languages. And it's super fun. And then it starts to be like, time goes by. We call them once a month and then we call them every 3 months, and then we stop talking as much, and then we start actually getting in fights. And
Mm.
because like culturally, like things just don't make as much sense anymore, and things are changing, and we just don't get each other's world anymore. And maybe we just stop talking entirely, and we lose that best friend. Um, and this is an analogy for, I think, how many of us experience the relationship that we have with our bodies.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Oh, this is
So
what
it's
I
a
shared too. So, oh, that's so
really,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like
Oh,
coming home to the body, like coming home to
yeah.
the relationship with your body. I think we sometimes forget it because our worlds are becoming so much more cerebral, the technology and the way that we do work, most of us on the internet now. So we're like losing touch with the relationship that we have with our body. So like mind body connection, like that's cool. It sounds buzzwordy, but when I think about it, I think about it as like the relationship between our body and mind. So if you're
Yeah.
someone who's like, I want a deeper relationship with my body and I want to share that with other people,
Yeah.
then that is, yeah, that's what somatics is about for me.
Oh, what a beautiful way to sign off this session that we've shared with everyone. And yeah, smiling ear to ear, feeling really happy in my body, really feeling like grateful to hear everything that you've shared. And thank you so much for being here. It was really lovely to be in this space with you today, where we could explore the trauma informed paths of yoga nidra and somatic work. If you feel called to explore this even further, I have left the links below so that you can join Matthew's community in somatic coaching as well as the Nova Nidra Community. Together, I believe that you're going to find a space of deep rest and beautiful connection within. We'll see you on the other side.